and welcome to our podcast, Tuku Talks, where we talk about stuff that matters to rangatahi. My name is Janaye Henry, I'm one of your hosts.
I'm the other host, Turia.
Yeah, and we are currently sitting in the boots of our car in a Newmarket car park. So you may hear horns, you may hear, what else might they hear?
Rain, thunder.
Yeah, we're expecting all kinds of weather today. And today we are tackling a huge kaupapa. Would you say?
Legacy.
Legacy. But we are joined with two very special guests sitting in a car next to us. We have Astley and Jordyn. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Kia ora, ko Astley ahau, he uri tēnei no ngāpui, Ngāti Hene, Ngāti Haua, Ngāti Maru Hoki.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm Astley, and I'm here to join you on the big kaupapa of Legacy.
Hey.
Kia ora, I'm Jordyn. He uri tēnei no whaingaroa, no muli whanua lalovi hoki ki Hāmoa. And yeah, excited to talk about a pretty massive topic.
Yeah, we definitely haven't made it easy for you today.
I just want to say, hello, I'm from Ngāti Haua and Samoa. Let's go.
Kia ora, tell us about
Ooh, not the whanaunga, straight out the gate. Let's just start from the top. What is legacy to you? What does that word mean to you?
I can kind of have a
Biggest
good go.
question straight off the
We'll
bat.
just
What
have
is
a quick
legacy?
start.
Oh.
Please define it.
We can start at the top.
I think when I hear the word legacy anyway, I think of something that's meaningful that you leave behind, right? Something that's meaningful that maybe you've put some energy towards that then others can either benefit from or see or appreciate. Yeah.
Add to.
Yeah, kia ora.
Cool.
Yeah, I think similar to what you're saying, Jordyn, in the sense that it's something that you leave behind. And that's not necessarily money or land, it could be, for me anyways.
Kia ora if it is.
Yeah, hard, yeah.
But we're open to it.
I mean, whenua was awesome. If you can pass me down some whenua, that's great. But for me, it kind of, when I was younger, I guess I looked at legacy like, what am I gonna do that people are gonna remember me by? Like, and maybe that might have been like, oh, I want to be on TV, or I want to, do this, that, and the other, be an actor. And then I guess sort of with my journey with the language of Te Reo Māori, it's kind of become more about like, am I going to give the language to my kids, or am I going to give, that sense of belonging to the culture to them? Because when I was growing up, I didn't feel like I was like
Little identity,
Yeah, I was a little bit imposter syndrome, that vibe. So, even my family and my kids to come, I don't want them to ever feel that way.
Yeah.
So that was sort of.
I
what
definitely
think
feel
about.
that.
Yeah.
That's
legacy.
actually the reason that I learned that I went like full immersion into Te Reo Māori. Like that reclamation journey was because I had just had baby, and same thought was I feel super uncomfortable, even though it's amazing. I belong at a particular marae, I belong at Puehakena, but I always felt like, I don't know, very like a stranger, and I never wanted my kids to feel like that. So I was like, well, if I learn Te Reo Māori, then that's a particular legacy that passes on, that he would never have to feel that or be on the awkward journey of learning.
Yeah.
I get to do that mahi so that he can do a different mahi that's just like further ahead. Yeah.
And I think that's what people before us have done, and that's why we're all doing the kind of mahi and we can stand in the world that we stand in now, because those before us kind of left their legacy. So
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Do you think that the concept of legacy in Te Ao Māori is perhaps different to like a Western idea of legacy?
Well, I wonder.
Ooh.
And like, this is not even, I don't know, this is a very developing thought. Can we just have a very developmental thought
This
together?
is a developing podcast.
But I wonder about Modi, the idea of Modi, like energy, life force, and kind of how that corresponds with the idea of legacy. Because I think in Te Ao Pākehā, it's like what we leave behind, which money is made because you've put a particular amount of energy into collecting money, whatever, land, and then it kind of goes to the next generation. But I think we've always had that idea and practice beyond just like humanity, if that makes sense. Like we believe in Modi, we believe that there's been energy and life force that we get to participate in, or, so the whenua is not just the whenua. We didn't just like wake up one day and get here. There's a whole whakapapa to it.
Yeah.
So I don't know, that's kind of like what I've been thinking about.
Ooh.
I love that.
Not to get too deep.
No, but that was
I'm
cool.
like,
That's really cool.
you're like, that's what I've been thinking about. I'm like, when? Like, at what point? You're just like in the
Last 5
shower,
seconds, no.
like about to go to sleep, and you're like,
Yeah, when you're trying
Modi.
to relax and then Modi, legacy.
Modi. See Modi in the street. Aye.
Straight up though, there
Straight
is.
up, straight
Yeah,
up.
straight up.
Yeah, I think like, I guess when I like take a look back on my family, I'm both Pākehā and Māori, and my Pākehā side is a lot different, but I don't know how I could like describe that difference in a sense of legacy. I think ultimately both, or all humans just want to give their uri or their children or
Yeah.
you know their grandkids the best life that they can, and I
Yeah,
think
absolutely.
like you know that's kind of what I look at when I think of legacy, or if there's difference between Te Ao Pākehā and Te Ao Māori. I think Te Ao Māori there's a lot more like deep whakaaro, and kind of like when we talk about Māori, we talk about life essence, and we talk about sort of the language and what we fought for it and all that. There's
Very
a lot,
holistic.
yeah, there's a lot more to that. Whereas I think Pākehā are like, I don't know, I don't want to say shallow. They're not shallow, but it's just not as
Just
cultural.
different, I
yeah,
guess,
it's just
eh?
different. And I kind of feel like, man, I don't know what I would be like if I didn't have my culture.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
imagine,
yeah.
imagine like not being Māori and not having your whakapapa, where you're from, a marae, your tūranga waiwai, like your stories of the atua and just those things that sort of like help you to become like a whole person.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm not having that, I'd feel like
The
man,
deeper connections than the house you live in, and the job you go to, like
the
something
money,
beyond the
yeah.
everyday life. That's kind of
definitely.
what I'm getting from.
Yo,
Yes,
hard.
I reckon too the maybe the difference is that legacy from maybe a Te Ao Pākehā perspective is very reliant on the individual. Like it's very reliant on me by myself to do the best thing that I can do that maybe people can see, right? But I think in Te Ao Māori it's all very connected, very holistic, and so it doesn't have to be seen by everyone. Like your name is already written in a whakapapa line. It'll always be there. Nothing will ever change that. Whether you did something that everyone saw or not.
Yeah.
Like just because you exist, just because you are, means that you have a particular legacy within that whakapapa line. Yeah.
Ooh.
And I feel like Māori's more like you said, some Pākehā may be individual, and it's more kind of like collective, communal.
Totally.
The idea of legacy with Te Ao Māori. I think that's across like the world with the iwi taketake,
Yeah, kia
like
ora,
First
I think so.
Nations, all of them, Aboriginal in Australia. I feel like they all kind of got a deeper connection, legacy in mind,
Yeah.
more than the monetary value.
I think we're just more acutely aware that we're the result of so many other people's legacies.
There it is.
I think that's where you like keep going back to, right? You're like, well, whereas I don't know if Pākehā like needs to think about that constantly in the same way,
Yeah.
because there's never been a threat of extinction of Pākehā. Like
Yeah.
that just hasn't happened yet.
Yeah. The history's there for to read, and everything's
Yeah.
out for them. We need to
Yeah.
find ours.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Yeah.
both kind of touched on it before, your real journeys in relation to your legacy. Do you mind giving us like a quick run through, or however long you want, a long run through of what that journey's been like for the two of you?
Yeah. You want to go?
Yeah. Oh, it's been me, eh?
Love
It's been
it.
yeah, I love the journey. Yeah, so it's been a massive part of my life. Actually, throughout my whole life, but I've actually really put a lot of time into it over the past 2 years.
Yeah.
And so sort of growing up, quick backstory, I was born and raised in Auckland, and I'd never been to my marae, didn't know the language. My mum kind of was disconnected as well, so we kind of grew up in a very Te Ao Pākehā framework, I guess, or like, you know, we were Māori kei roto, we had like
Yeah.
Māori heart, ngākau Māori, but we just didn't know the language, we didn't really understand the tikanga, and what you were saying about feeling like a stranger when you go into like your marae and stuff, that was us.
Yeah.
You know, that was us. It's kind of like a stink feeling when the place that you should feel most comfortable in, you feel like a stranger. You
Yeah.
know, then that was the vibe. So, yeah, I guess I kind of continued on that journey for a long time in my life, and then last year decided to take the year off and do full immersion at Takiura. And
Shout out to Takiura.
Shout out to Takiura, it was me.
Love it.
And it sort of just opened my eyes a little bit more to like, I don't know, how important Te Taha Māori is, and just knowing your language and knowing where you're from. Ko waio no heo, like those pātai are massive. Who am I and where am I from? And I think like in it, well, as a Māori and not knowing those things and your identity, it makes your journey a lot harder. So I think I'm just fully grateful for the learning journey that I had last year, and now being able to feel a lot more comfortable and feel a lot more, I guess, proud's not the word, but more validated in the sense that I'm like, yeah, I'm Māori, you know, like I've done my time, I've put time into it, and now I can understand what people say and a little bit more about the tikanga and whakaaro Māori and all of that.
Yeah.
So it's just like a whole nother world, and I'm super grateful.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
Yeah, I think similarly, like growing up, I also didn't have reo Māori. I grew up closer to my Samoan side, so I was always surrounded by that language, by Samoan language, and not very connected to my hokainga or anything like that. But I also honestly grew up with like a shame attachment to being Māori, so I would always be like, oh, I'm Samoan, but I wouldn't claim my Māori heritage. No, honestly, no one taught me that. I just, whatever we were soaking in the environment of society or whatever, just made me very embarrassed. And so reclamation for me has been really important for being because I can't change that I'm Māori. Like that's something that I live, like you can't change it. You can't like scrub it off your skin or anything like that.
Yeah.
So the reclamation of my reo and growing up, reclaiming the love for identity has been massive, like huge. So even before getting to reo reclamation, just reclaiming the idea that being Māori was beautiful. It's so sad to me, but it was the reality.
Yeah.
And so then, so a couple of years ago, I went to Takiura as well, shout outs, and really intentionally wanted to reclaim te reo Māori because I wanted my kids to learn Māori. And I wanted them to be in Māori spaces and to always feel beautiful, to feel like handsome, to feel confident when they associate themselves, like as soon as they hear the words Māori, I wanted them to feel those things.
Yeah.
Because for me it was the opposite, and I had to really undo a bunch of, to be honest, colonized thinking.
Yeah.
And so I wanted my kids to make sure that when they thought about being Māori, and my son does it now, he asks every day, he wants a mataora, because to him that's like that's the taumata of like, that's handsome, that's purotu, and that's a massive win for me. Sorry, Mike team.
No, I love that.
Yeah, massive win for me. So reclamation for me has definitely been because of a generational thing. Also, my parents, I need a shout out because, you know, my dad was whāngai out, and so that's why we weren't connected to our hokainga. And he grew up in an even harsher environment, and so the fact that he forced me to learn te reo Māori at high school. I wanted to learn French. He was like, darling, you could learn French if you were French, but you're Māori, go and learn Māori. So he did a lot of mahi to keep reinforcing to me that that's not a bad thing, and I think it was very anti whatever he was growing up as well. So he'd done a bunch of internal work so that it, you know, paved the way for me. Yeah, it's very much a generational thing.
I love that you and your dad have already started like your guys' own legacy, and that's for like your whole whānau and your uripakeke. Like that's me.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, those seeds are like sown. The fact that your son's already like, it's amazing. Like that's half the job.
He growls me for listening to Pākehā music. He's like, when I'm dropping him off at school, he's like, turn it down to te reo Pākehā.
Like embarrassed? Embarrassed?
Yeah.
How old is your son?
He's 5.
Oh.
So he's just started at Kura Kaupapa, yeah. And he's loving it. He's like a little bossy Māori kid. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Wait till he gets into hakas.
Yeah,
He's
kia
gonna
ora.
be singing all around the house.
Are you on the recruits already?
Yeah. On the lookout already.
He's our listener.
How do you think, like legacy, the idea of it, what we're striving for, how do you think that's changed over the last few years even? Like, obviously the things we used to fight for, how's that changing? What do you think's coming up in legacies? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll get in there then.
Yeah, get in there.
I feel like we're benefiting now from the legacy that, you know, everyone who went down to Parliament to fight for Māori language, that, you know, all of those, we're at that level now, and now we need to set it up for our kids, like, which we're at a good spot, and we're only there because of everyone else's legacy, and hopefully, you know, we'll leave more for your kids and our kids.
Absolutely. I feel like you know, people's legacy means that we get a different platform to have a starting line, right? So our starting line is way further ahead than, you know, those who went before us to really fight for our starting line.
Yeah.
So it means that you get to, you know, it goes from being, can we have Te Reo Māori schools to, can we have the name change to Aotearoa?
Yeah.
You know, because that's like our bottom line shifts. The things that we settle for is not as low as it used to be. We're like, no, like we deserve this much now, you know. And so I can only imagine how much we get done in this generation for the next lot. Like it feels beyond my scope of imagination, but that's the beauty of it, right? It means the dreams, you know, ka whakawhanui, they go way bigger than what we have capacity for right now.
Yeah, I think exactly what you guys just said. Like, literally, like the people that fought for our language and everything that we have now, like that's their legacy, and we are beneficiaries of that.
Yeah.
And now we have this new platform where Te Reo Māori, but the Māori culture is celebrated that we now get to benefit from.
Yeah.
So then it's like on us now to go, oh, okay, well, what platform are we going to leave for our tamariki and their tamariki, you know what I mean? How are we going to leave this place in a better state than when we leave, you know what I mean?
Be a good tupuna.
Yeah, harder. And I think the other thing that sort of comes to mind in terms of just us talking about Te Reo and like legacy and stuff is, I think I've gotten so much from the learning journey and like from Te Reo and from the culture. But I remember one time I was with my auntie, we went to our marae last year, and I was like, wow, this is mean, this is awesome. We did a matariki celebration and the kaumātua, they were doing the karakias and stuff, and I was just like, wow, this is mean. Didn't even know about any of what they do. And then I was telling my auntie, oh, I really want to learn all the karakia. Like I wish you could just sit down and teach me. And then she's like, oh yeah, nah, like hard out. A lot of people want to learn the karakia and a lot of people want to learn this and sort of take, but actually, you know, what are you giving back?
Yeah.
Ooh.
You know, she's like, what are you giving back to the language or to your marae or to your kaumātua? And I was like, far out. Like, it kind of really changed the way that I was thinking at that time of like, I want to learn the language. I want to learn more. I want to learn these karakia so that I know it and it's more of a personal thing as opposed to like, actually how are you now giving back to whatever it is, the language, your family, I don't know, like anything like that. And it just really helped me make like a good shift.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that in terms of how we are benefiting from our ancestors and the people that fought for the things that we have now, it's kind of like, okay, well, how do we give back?
Yeah, that's super important, because I know we talk a lot about reo reclamation, and I'm very passionate about Te Reo Māori, but actually I think just reclamation in general is really important because there are a lot of people who just don't have the time to put into reclaiming their reo, but they might have time to reclaim marakai, you know, or they might have time to reclaim maramataka Māori, or they might have time to just be hanging in their whānau spaces and their haukainga. And because we're talking about legacy, like it doesn't have to be this massive, I don't think it does anyway, it doesn't have to be like this massive thing that we do. I think what you can give to reclamation is enough, because we live in particular circumstances that, you know, like not everyone can give up their 9-to-5 job for their whānau to go and spend a year reclaiming reo. I'm so privileged that I got to do that, and I recognize that. Like, it took my whānau, it took my husband holding it down financially so that we could like live and eat. Not everyone has that privilege, so reclamation really moves at your pace, and I think it doesn't have to be at this grand pace that we can't all be Taika Waititi, but shout outs like you can be someone that just is giving, you know, reading one kupu a day, learning one Māori thing a day just to reclaim your identity, looking in the mirror and being like, actually I'm beautiful because I'm Māori, you know, not despite being Māori, because I'm Māori. That's reclamation too. I think that's important.
I like what you said about your contribution to a kaupapa regardless, because at my kura there's a saying that this guy I used to go to school with called Te Koro Roberts. He always says, I don't know if it's a shout out, but he reckons, he aha tō koha ki tō kura. So like, what can we give back? Like, how do we give back to our school that raised us in Māoritanga and all of that? And I like what you said because I always tell him, I was like, well, you know, he's got a very big contribution. He's probably going to be he's probably being kaya te rangatira 2075. But I was like, you know, I was like, speak more, you know, I was like, even though it's small, I'm adding to the kete, you know, we're like speaking Māori, even though it might not be the Panis level, but you know, trying to normalise te reo Māori by being on a bilingual show, you know, 100%. I think we all are, like every day, we're all on Instagram doing, look like Barry, I see you a lot, like we were talking on Instagram about your real journey, hadn't even met you till today, so even that, just connecting everyone together, like, kua he iti, ne whānau, ne te kōrau, he paunamu. So I like that you said that. And I think that goes for people who learning te reo Māori in their adulthood, and it goes for people who are born with it, you know? Yeah. Don't think that because you're raised in it, you have to be the pānia papa of the world, because you won't.
I think what's cool about sort of our generation now is that for a long time being Māori, it was sort of associated with negativity and trauma and, you know, whatever else you want to see, whether that was seeing it on TV, you know, gangs, news, all of this stuff that was just always really bad. But now it's like there's just a huge shift, and it's you can just feel it, you know what I mean? And
it's cool to be Māori, yeah.
Hard out, and it's really cool to be Māori. It's and like that's just beautiful to see, and I think that it's only just going to get more and more and more.
Absolutely.
And more, which is exciting as well. But something that I thought was I read this, I don't know. Oh no, one of my bros told me actually. He said, there's two things that were passed down from our ancestors. Hopefully this ties into legacy. But there's intergenerational trauma, right? Which is like, oh yeah, I get that. You know, we're disconnected trauma. But then there's also intergenerational knowledge, I think is what he said. And that's kind of like, I don't know, like the whakaaro of our tupuna, you know, just the maramataka, all of those types of things that are now like, they're taonga, that we get to sort of live and breathe and use every day, which is, I don't know, I just feel like that's mean, you know? That's not just trauma anymore, it's like we're seeing the good sides of Māoridom and te reo and our culture, which is cool.
And I guess that's the legacy that all of those people, like Rangi Mātāmua has, like, he'll probably have other legacies, but one legacy that he really gave a lot of us is matariki, you know, and now we've got a public holiday and stuff. So we're benefiting from the legacy he's still creating. Like he's creating his tomorrow today.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
Sorry.
I've got a question. Have you guys thought about what your legacy is going to be?
Oh.
I thought about it when I saw the subject of this. I was like, damn, never actually thought about it, so I saw the word.
Yeah, straight up.
I mean, I definitely want, my legacy to be the from my whakapapa, the generation that reclaimed. Because before me, I think it's 2 generations that didn't grow up with the reo Māori. So we had it, and then it was gone for 2 generations, and I want, like, our generation reclaimed it, and from my kids onwards, we'll always have it. That's my dream. And then I got some other like little ones. I just want to be seen as pretty.
Yes, the pretty legacy.
She was young, you know. So like both like on the hard out deep spectrum, and then like
you obviously always have these little fun ones. Eh?
What are some of the shallow legacies?
Oh, like, right there with the shallow.
Like I want people to be like, man, her energy was cool. Like when I leave, and even just like on a mini set, I always feel like when I leave people, I want to leave people feeling good. When I teach, I want people to leave not feeling like too daunted, but going that's it's a space that feels safe to learn, and just like little kind of vain things like that. But can't help it.
I feel like we all have those.
Yeah.
You asked the question.
You asked the question about
you guys got legacy?
I'm thinking.
Man, I think when I was younger I used to think more about it. Like, you know, what am I gonna achieve in this world? What, you know, like I always had this sense of like I'm going to achieve something and do something massive. And that was kind of like, what is that gonna be? I'm not too sure, but I'm kind of gonna be known, you know, in some way, shape, or form. And then now I'm kind of like, this is might be a bit off subject. No, well, not off subject, but a bit of a different whakaaro. But like, it's like, does legacy actually matter? in a sense of like, you know, in 100 years or 200 years, like this, I look back on my whakapapa and I see names and that's all I see. I don't know them. I don't know what they did in their lives. I don't know their journeys. They're just, to me, they're just names on a piece of paper. Obviously I come from them, but I don't have a connection to them. And that's only 150 years ago. So I'm like, in 150 years time, when I've passed on, like, is what I do in my life really gonna eventuate and matter that much?
All
Because-
the existential questions.
Well, I have like a spicy hot take for you that I'm gonna give to you.
Spicy, let's go.
You might reckon you don't know them, but I reckon they know you. Like, I reckon that's
works both
legacy.
ways.
I reckon that's how that goes. So you're like, oh, I don't have a connection, they're just names on paper. Maybe, but you're only where you are, like, in the car, in a car park right now, because of all those names on a piece of paper. Do you know what I mean?
100%. And I don't discredit or like say
No,
I'm
no.
not connected to them or they're not my tupuna. And, you know, it's just more of a whakaaro that I've been thinking about recently, where it's like,
I feel the question, and I wonder if it's just like, because I know that everything that I get to do now is based on my nana's decision to move from Samoa, right? She migrated from Samoa to Aotearoa, and her thing was, I just want more opportunity for the generation she didn't know yet. And the reason she got to that decision was because of the relationship she had with her grandmother, you know, and all the input. I don't know her, I never knew personally her grandmother, but I benefited 100% from my relationship with my nana, who was built by the relationship with her nana, who was built by the relationship, you know what I mean? So it's very interconnected, even though we find ourselves further along in the line, if that makes sense. Like, I always think about the navigators, that whole story of navigation. To me, I'm just like, yeah, of course we know how to get through hardship, we know how to reclaim, we know how to navigate through hard spaces and dark places because it's in us. Like, no one had to teach us how to do it. We just are those people, you know, we are them, it's in us, and we don't have to know it personally for it to exist necessarily. But maybe in 150 years no one will be talking about us personally, but someone will exist, hopefully.
I think also that framework kind of gives less pressure and less sense of like urgency in your everyday life to create that legacy, with a sense that like, oh, if I just live my life and, you know, enjoy it and live to the best of my ability, and whatever comes from that, that's okay.
100%.
You know what I mean? Like, that's enough.
That's the dream for me. Yeah.
It's like, I don't need to think about, oh man, like, I need to be the #1 at this, or I need to be the world's biggest actor, or I need to be the best podcast in the world, so that, you know, that's my legacy. It's kind of just like, it releases that sort of, I need to do something, and kind of lets you just go, oh, well, all right, I've got 60 more years to live, like, let's just have a mean,
thinking about
let's have a mean time,
add to
you know
my
what I mean? Let's
legacy.
have a good life.
Like,
Straight up.
Some people probably are.
I don't know if we have, I think you're right in that. I don't know if we have much control over what our legacy is. Like, we can think it's going to be one thing, but
Is legacy something that other people give you?
Yeah, kia ora.
You know, like, is it not for you to say what your legacy is? Maybe
What do you
it's
reckon?
for...
Turia.
I just set myself up for that one,
Roll
eh? Yeah, maybe legacy is something that is given to you. I think maybe in the Māori world it's definitely like that, because it kind of wouldn't make sense that you would say, like, I done this, you know, not in the Māori, but you wouldn't be like, hey, I revitalised you guys' language, thank me, like, that's because of me. Like, I don't think that ever happens. I think it's when they're gone sometimes that people are like, you know, karangatira te tangata i ai mate ana, you know, they wait to like glorify people once they've passed away, you know, that's when you talk good about things. And I think that's when people think, like, they kind of think, oh man, what did they leave for us? And then they think, they're like, shit, it was this, it was this, boom, that was his legacy. And that kind of comes out. But then I guess there's a lot of other people who, I mean, there's people that in my whānau that you guys have never heard of, but I know that they have left a legacy for my
100%.
whānau. Like, my grandfather left to make sure that we stay together as whānau, even when we don't want, like, you know, and that's something he's left in all of us. And that's definitely a legacy my children will have. Hey, your whānau, bro. Like,
kia ora.
kaore, ko titi, like. So I think, you know, it's something that's given to you. Hopefully, the legacy that we leave behind, I hope we all it's the one that we think we're leaving. Then they're just like, oh, she was out of it.
She was an idiot.
Yeah.
Fair games.
Yeah.
Still true.
All good, all good.
Hopefully we can be better at giving people the flowers when they're alive.
Ooh.
You know?
That's what, yeah, I
you know,
always
it's
think
kind
about
of
that
sad
too.
when we see someone passing away at rangatira and then people go, oh, they did so much and they were amazing and they did this, that and the other. It's like, oh, give people their recognition and their flowers when they're alive, when they're doing it, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Support them along their journey because, I don't know, it's stink to leave it till they can't even hear you, you know?
Yeah, straight up. Do you want to give out some flowers? No.
Right now.
Just
Yeah.
to myself.
One compliment to everyone.
What I kind of, and I'll just touch briefly on this, what I kind of like about the world that we live in now with so much kind of racism things coming up, I like that. I feel like the legacy that's kind of being left for the future is kind of a collective one. Like all of us, you know, all come from different places. None of us really know each other. Well, I think us four, but we kind of got here and we kind of all have the same. Our idea of legacy was identity, te reo Māori, you know, whānau. So it's. I think legacy. I'm looking forward to the legacy to come because I think it's more of a collective across just Māoridom as opposed to your whānau and thing. I think the collective is getting bigger.
Yeah.
And bigger.
Yeah,
And now it's going
100%.
to iwi taketake, you know,
Yeah.
across the world. So.
Definitely. I wonder too if we're like all leaving digital legacies, right? Like, what
Yeah.
happens to our Instagram profiles?
Ooh.
I'll tell you what, some people got some hot tupuna.
What about Kim Kardashian's legacy? I don't want to leave
Exactly.
those ones. The $1 billion, yes, but not the fame.
Like, that's the thing with this generation is like you can make a video and that can last forever.
Ooh.
You know what I mean? Like I can
Do you
literally
have some videos out there that you're like, ah,
yeah, multiple. I got so many. I'm like, oh, don't show
I think
me
I've like
this.
literally just claimed that I'm an idiot, so sorry about it, but like whatever comes from there comes from it.
it's the idiots that
Yeah.
I fall back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the technology's kind of changed the way that we can pass on information and knowledge. You know what I mean?
It can also like get your legacy pumping much faster, social media.
And it's
you
good
can either, your legacy can be like, hello, it'll be known.
Hard out. It's mean accountability. There's some like Facebook posts, say, from which I'm very grateful that, you know, just from when I was in high school, just like words that we don't use anymore, that
straight
are just very embarrassing.
Keep that opinion to yourself.
Oh,
Studio
100%.
2009.
Thank you.
Yeah.
But you know what? It serves me well. It's just like things that keep us humble.
My question is like, in terms of names and whānau, where do you think that sits? So I'm talking like naming tamariki, I'm also talking like last names, right? Like often, traditionally, wahine take the tāne's last name. What do we think about that? Because in terms of legacy and passing stuff down, where does that sit with us?
Let's give it to the Tane first.
Yeah.
Oh man.
There is a wrong no, I'm kidding.
No pressure, but there is a wrong answer.
Now, I was actually thinking about this before, just in terms of the sort of getting married and passing on, or the wahine taking the tāne's ingoa,
Yeah.
whānau ingoa. I think that it's just up to each individual circumstance. You know what I mean? Like, if you are in a relationship and you're gonna get married, isn't it just a, hey, like, let's have a conversation about this, let's talk about it. You know, is it important for you to keep your name, your last name as your last name? Do I change my last name? Do we hyphenate it? I think there's a lot of hyphenations happening.
The
Like,
mashup.
like, you know, like Nathan Davis or whatever it might be. But for me, in my sort of my own name journey, it's been interesting. So I'm actually not a Nathan. So that's my stepdad's last name. Because my stepfather pretty much raised me from a young age, like it was kind of it just felt right for me to take his last name.
Beautiful.
And the rest of my family were Nathans, and my mother took his last name when they got married. So they were just like, you know, we would love you to be a Nathan. So I was like, oh, okay, sweet as. So I changed my name from Fullerton Davis to Nathan. So I had to go see my father and like tell him, oh, look, I'm changing my name. I'm, you know, dropping the Davis. And
Wow.
he was not really around when I was younger, so he didn't really have much say. But when I went and told him, I could tell he was pretty gutted.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah,
it's his legacy, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
He sees himself in me, but now I don't have his last name, which doesn't mean that I don't come from him, but
Yeah.
it's just like, I guess it's that pride, you know, that sense of like, yeah, that's, you know, that's me carrying on my name.
There's a physical
yeah,
legacy
you know,
you can
like you
see,
see
yeah,
that. So yeah, I just in terms of my own sort of last name, and it's kind of just, I think it's just up to you, eh? Like, it's up to you.
Hey, every situation's different fun.
Hey, aku te tikanga, man, honestly.
Your life.
Yeah, what did you do when you got married?
Yeah, I got married. I changed my name to my husband's name, but I don't know. I felt like super excited about it. Not to like get rid of my name. I think because I have always been very connected with my whānau, and yeah, I think I just felt super connected with my whānau, so it didn't really seem like a big deal to me. But in terms of like naming kids, that was I when I was growing up, I just didn't I was like, you know, choose a name that sounds nice or to the ear. But when I was pregnant with my first boy, it was really important for me to find names of tupuna, you know, to find names that made sense for our whakapapa line. And so yeah, so that's kind of like it made us have to reconnect with who we came from. And I knew that I wanted them to carry their dad's last name too. But I think I'm saying this because I'm in a very healthy, loving relationship. So you know, and that's out of aroha. I love my husband and he's beautiful and he's good to me. I think that if you're in a relationship that you feel pressured to do that, don't do it. Like, you know, or if someone's telling you that there's an expectation to change your name, whatever, that's not the same circumstance that I'm talking from. I wanted to change my name because of how much love I have towards my husband and how beautiful he is. And I also wanted my boys, I feel really proud that our whakapapa lines get to merge together in our kids. So I just don't want anyone who's listening to be like, oh yeah, okay, I'll just change my name because Jordyn said. But you know, I'm talking from a very specific relationship perspective, and I think it's very important to look at your own situation and be like, is it healthy? Is this good for me? And then make a choice from there. But yeah, so for my kids, Toa Awanuiarangi, that's my first baby.
Beautiful name.
Toa came from my mum because it means the same thing in Samoan and Māori. And it was beautiful because my nana was with us at that time, she was still alive, and that was so important for her to be able to like say their names, say these boys' names. And Awanuiarangi is also a tupuna ingoa in our whakapapa line. And then my youngest boy, his name's Pakotaiko. So it's like a little remix of Pakotai, which is where my husband is from, up north. And then Taiko is a ingoa tupuna from my line. And then his middle name is Lapalapa, which is a chief name from Samoa, and that's what my nana would call him before she passed away earlier this year. So 100% whakapapa plays a huge part, and legacy, even just those names, and discovering who these people were. So I know who these people were in our whakapapa line, which is why it's a bit dangerous though, because we named him Pakotai, Pakoana, Aotepo Potao, like he's a very loud little child.
You embody the name. Hey, like I've heard that when you give, or I've even seen it when you give someone a name, or tupuna or your auntie or something, you see those mannerisms, you see that person comes to life in that one.
So do it carefully. Maybe wahangu is a good name for the next one.
Nui te moni. Hine nui ngā whenua. Yeah. But honestly, I love that. Like I do believe that when you give a name, like you're getting that. And it's cool to give tupuna names because you do go back and learn.
Yeah.
Like I want, like my whānau, we grew up on the Māori side, so me and my little sister are all about going back to our Samoan side and learning that language and that side of our culture. So that's really cool. Like her name's Metotangi Vale, and then we finally learned about the kuia that was in the cave that used to look after the tuna that used to come in Samoa. So that's what I love. Like, cool, your children already have legacy. They got the legacy of their names.
They have the longest names.
And the one that your nan.
The longest names.
You know, they got the legacy of your nan. They got that story in their name that she would have given it to him. Like.
Yeah.
I also think names are quite fascinating, especially with you, Jordyn, because you also like perform under Jordyn with a Y.
Yeah.
So there's a Mr. with a Y somewhere, but like that's fascinating too, because there's like your legacy in terms of names is quite multifaceted. I know you as Kaiko as well. Yeah. So like that's, it feels weird calling you Jordyn, it feels disrespectful. Yeah. But it's
call me Jordyn all the time.
Also, I know. I choose Kaiko. I rarely say your name, even in class. I always say Kaiko, straight up. But your legacy with names is like quite multifaceted because of that. Was becoming Jordyn with a Y, was that like an intentional stage choice you made?
It was in terms of like now. I made up that name in high school being a pick-me girl because I was like, everyone's name is Jordyn, but I've got a Y in my name, so I was like Jordyn with a Y. But then obviously getting older, I felt like a Y is very important, and so in discovering my why, it was like a little quirky play on words.
Oh, I love it.
But yeah, definitely. I feel like I've embodied that name, and then that came from the space that I was in anyway.
It's a cool handle, man. When I was trying to look for you on Instagram, I kept on putting Jordyn with the A. So I was like, Jordyn then with the Y. I was like, what?
And there it is. Yeah.
Use the Y.
Yeah. Kia ora.
Hey,
Ah,
kia ora.
great name.
I think it's cool being an artist and a creative yourself. That I think that legacy starts to become a little bit more. You can see it a lot more as an artist, because when you make something from yourself and you share it with the world, that is now out there. You know what I mean? And that's gonna be there forever. It's kind of like when I think about my whakaaro of, is legacy really a thing? But then when I think about artists, like Michael Jackson, Bob Marley, you know, they have a legacy that lives on forever and ever and ever. And those songs sort of take you back and remind you of them and, you know, what they were going through and how those songs make you feel. And that's kind of like a deep connection to an artist like yourself. So people are gonna have those experiences with you forever.
Yeah, I love
You know what I mean? As long as wherever you put your music up is still a thing. You know what I mean? Like, they're gonna be able to tap into you, whether that's 100 years down the track or which is
blows my brain
crazy.
in. I was a part of this little project where we had to write letters to our great-great-grandchildren and read them out, and then I think in like 100 years they'll play it to them. And it honestly like almost broke my brain thinking about who I'm writing to and what personalities they would be and what would they want to hear from me, and like how do you encourage someone who's like living in a time, I don't know, are we flying cars by then or do we have cars? I don't know.
The world exploded by radiation.
Who knows?
This might be the Matrix week.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like we're all just in pods and they just.
But that idea, even just leaving things behind that just are there forever to stumble across.
I think that's what I enjoyed about sort of media and videos and sort of wanting to get into creation space in my own life, because like, I don't know, man, that's always gonna be there, eh? Like when you make something and you give it to the world, like it's there forever. You know what I mean? Like I can go back 5 years and look at videos that I made and kind of be like, oh man, that's gonna live on forever. You know what I mean? Like that's almost like I see things like this are like taonga. You know, they're like gifts. They're like, we cannot be anywhere else in the world right now other than being recorded. And however we're feeling and whatever comes to mind at that moment in time is what's gonna now be like forever documented. You know what I mean? But I know it's kind of like
No pressure.
Wait, I'm like, cut the cameras. That's a lot.
Take the mics
But
away.
this is something that like my great grandchildren could probably go and see eventually. It's like, oh, that was my great Uncle Astley, and you know he was doing this and having recorded on a car boot, you know.
He left this
What a
beanie
cars!
for me.
Yeah.
What a boots, you know. Wow,
Maybe.
that's mean. That's mean.
Astley, I'm going to put you on the hot seat for a second. Tamariki, have you thought about them? Do you want them? It's not an offer from me personally, but just generally.
But the listeners are listening.
Yes, I have thought about tamariki. I'm single at the moment, so I don't have any tamariki myself.
Get in there, Etifa. Get into
That
those
sounded like an
DMs.
invitation.
But I want children. I definitely want children. I think it'd be awesome to have a little mini you running around that you can put knowledge and information and mindset into and give them everything that you sort of wish you had or that you want them to have growing up from yourself, you know? I think in terms of legacy and sort of me having children, and is that kind of why I do it? I don't think so. I think for me it's more just like I'd just love to raise a human being and just see what they do with their lives and where they go and sort of, you know,
so
do they
cool.
have like a cool journey, and how can I best help them to be their best selves? Like I want them to just be like, I just want them to smash it, you know what I mean? I just want to teach them everything and say, you know, don't do this, don't worry about this, you know, just sharing that experience. And then I guess in terms of my last name and stuff like that, I don't know, it's not, I don't really get too fussed on it. You know what I mean? If whatever they want to do is whatever they want to do. They've got their own little individual life, and if they wanted to keep my last name or not, cool. If they wanted to change it, sweet as. Like, there's nothing, I would not put pressure on them to carry on me. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I'm
you're
like,
not having them to
you're
have
not,
another year.
Yeah. I'm like, bro, you go do your thing, man.
Yeah, cool.
You like, we're family, you know? I'm your father, sweet as. I always know that, you know? Like,
Because there's some people out there, who are like, I want you to do this. I had you because of this.
Then there's people that are like,
a lot of
you know,
pressure.
their children have children. They're like, I want you to name your firstborn after me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My
Like,
dad.
yeah.
He's expecting the first one to be Lewis, and I'm like, oh.
And I think that they're like
Māori.
party on that. Like, nah, that, you know, like that's what you do. That's tikanga. Like,
Yes.
name your first boy after me. And I'm like, oh, all right, that's fuzzy to me. You know what I mean? So I haven't really thought about that in that sense. But yeah, that's kind of my take on tamariki. I do want some, and I think it'll be a mean haerenga. But this is from a guy that hasn't got any children.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
You're next door.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I
I'm
love
like,
them. They're also annoying.
bro, hard.
Yeah.
I
That's
feel
what
like
every parent says, Like, it's hard.
my
You
parents have
can't
got
give
3.
those ones back.
My parents have, yeah. My parents have got 3. I got 3 younger siblings, and I had to look after them a couple of weekends ago.
Oh.
And, bro,
How old are they?
I was like, take them back. Like 9, 11, and 14. And
Lots of energy, lots of
yeah,
energy.
but they're just like, I was
TikToks?
just dropping people off, drop them off to school, get back home. Oh, Kyle was sick, you gotta come pick him up. Oh, far out. Get home again. Oh, Tiari is sick, you gotta go pick her. Oh.
Why are you explaining my life right now?
There's just so
That's like
much.
everything.
It's pretty much you like giving your life over to your children for 18 years almost.
Yeah,
Even
yeah.
like longer. I'm still calling
No,
my
it
mum
might
now
stay
like,
longer.
Mum, this is
Yeah,
going
18
on in my
years.
life.
Lucky.
Oh, can I come have food at your house? What's for dinner? You know, that's the big
That's the cool
responsibility.
part, eh? That's
yeah,
like the fun
harder,
part.
harder. It's
Well,
a big responsibility.
Jordan will know more
Yeah.
about that. We haven't got considered.
Yeah, and obviously, like I've been talking about legacy because my life is that I do have children, and so that comes into conversation. But I don't think legacy has to be in relation to having children or not. Like, I think some human beings who don't want children will live beautiful, full lives and leave behind the legacies that they want to do. Like, it's not dependent necessarily on having kids or not. But you know, I love mine. They're nice.
What about you, Turia? Do you want kids?
I mean, maybe not really. Yeah, you know, I'm always just like go with the flow. So you know, not that I'm saying like definitely not in the next 4 years, fam. No. But yeah, if I did, I feel like the legacy I would, not from me that I would want to give, but a legacy I would want my kids to follow definitely is to go to Kura Kaupapa. Like, if I have kids,
Yeah, that's good.
they are going to Kura
Kia ora.
Kaupapa from Punareo to Wharekura right through. Like that is
Same.
Same.
yeah, I
Same.
can see growing up, you know, I was lucky enough to grow up with Te Reo Māori and in Kura Kaupapa, but then it was when I left Kura, I realised how lucky at school, I was like, we're drowning in Māori, this is too much Māori. Legit, I was like that as a teenager, which now I'm like, you little bitch. But you know, I had to grow older and then realise like, oh no, you had it good, like you didn't have whatever, you didn't have that trip to America that other school went to that you shouldn't really care about, but you know, you had the marae, so I think it's just a bit of that. Like, if anything, I'm a big believer in the Kura Kaupapa Māori legacy movement.
Te
To the
aho
death.
matua, kia ora.
So yeah,
Oh,
that's,
wow.
if anything, that's the only thing. And I definitely want to find my Samoan side. For if I have kids, you know, I hope it's ready for them to like, here it is, got it, you know, and they go out and then get bigger, not hunting like I've been and me and my dad have been doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's all culture and whānau. That's what legacy is. I mean, I don't know anyone who want to leave a legacy for those guys. You know, like no one leaves a legacy for other people over there that they don't know. They want to leave it for the things that they love and passionate about.
Yeah.
I hope that answers your question, yeah. What about you? You want some kids?
Oh, I was a definite no like a few years ago, and then when I did Te Tuhi Paitahi full immersion, I was finding it real hard to ground. Like, I thought I knew my why going in, but then everyone was like, I want this for the future generations, and I was like, oh, who am I doing this for then? Like, am I just out here for myself? Is that what I want? And I was like, nah, I do want to pass it on, but then my sister's definitely going to have kids.
There
So
you
it's like,
go.
pass it sideways, pass it
Yeah.
sideways. Like, yeah. So I've already like told my sister, I'm like, when they come to Auntie Janaye, it's going to be like, it's going to be noho marae style. Like, we're going to be, and my sister's like, oi, my kids aren't going to want to come to you. I'm like, that's, okay, I'm talking horse.
That's your sister.
That's my sister. Silencing
How
me.
wide do I know? She was like, excuse me.
But yeah, so I don't know now. Like I'm a bit, I think I'm less go with the flow than it sounds for you. And also I'm queer. So if I have kids,
and also there's no men, so
yeah.
like,
If I have kids, it's going to be like a huge effort.
Yeah, totally.
It's going to be like doctors and turkey basters.
Yeah.
So,
Sounds fun.
yeah, sounds real fun. Sounds mean. Yeah, it's going to have to be real intentional. It can't be go with the flow.
you're not gonna wake up and say, oh, I'm pregnant.
Oh, yeah, it's never going to be like, whoa. It's always going to be like, this is expensive.
Totally.
Yeah.
This is expensive.
This is expensive. Should we,
It's good conversation though, because I think some people, you know, the conversation around tamariki in connection with legacy is so different for different people. You know, some people just can't.
Yeah.
That's a reality. You know, does that mean that they're not going to have legacy?
Yes.
No,
Nah.
not at all. So I just think, yeah, it's a good corridor to be like, yeah, kids are going to come differently, whether you're like straight and they'll just come with the flow, maybe, or not, you know, and it's going to be something super intentional, or if you can't, or if you don't want to, like, legacy exists within that, outside of that, it's just this thing that moves in and through, I think, just human beings. Because actually, I think maybe legacy is just when we're doing something meaningful, right? You're doing something that's meaningful to you, and it has certain effects after that, like it becomes meaningful for others, whether those are children or friends, or even like older generations. Like, you know, it doesn't have to go, I don't think it's a linear thing necessarily, it just is.
Well, you went to your class to learn Māori for your, you know, whānau who didn't before you, so you know,
Yeah.
we were walking it, making it. Walking it and making it.
Making it work. Thank you so much for joining us in the boots in a car park. It's been really awesome talking about this huge kaupapa. Obviously, to the whānau listening at home, this is tip of the iceberg. Legacy's huge. This is the start of a conversation that we encourage you to have ongoing in your own buddies.
Yes,
Sweet.
and have them.
Yeah. Kia ora. I've been your host, Janaye Henry.
And your other host, Turia and Janaye with...
Kia ora, with Astley.
And Jordyn with a what?
Yeah, man, watch the followers come from distance of you. You ready?
Me.
All right. Ka kite.
Look at that.
Kaki.